tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
In the first verse 6, he talks about samsara is like swapna. So while the swapna is there, while the dream is there, it sounds very real. But the minute you wake up, it's very clear that it is not as real as a dream. Now the second verse, then I will explain to you how it applies to this day. Because they are similar verses, so I just wanted to read them and then I can. Tavat satyam jagat bhati shuktika rajatam yatha yavat na jnayate brahma sarva adhishthanam antara. Who wants to read? Vaishnav or Neema?
The world will continue to appear to be real, like the mother of pearl is taken to be silver, as long as Brahman, which is the substratum of all and one, without a second, is not known.
Okay, so there are two examples which are there. One is that of a dream, and the other one is this mother of pearl is taken to be silver. Okay, so this particular thing is important. What we need to understand is there is a certain relationship. As we saw, avidya, the opposite of avidya is what? Vidya. So what we are trying to do is to get to vidya. Avidya is ignorance. That ignorance produces, what is this shuktika rajatam? Shuktika rajatam means what is there is mother of pearl, but you see it as silver. This is what we call adhyasa. So that means not knowing the nature of Atma. Leads to adhyasa. What kind of adhyasa? Adhyasa means superimposition. What is the other better English word for adhyasa? Superimposition. That's all. Okay.
Is it the same as projection, or?
Yeah, probably we can use the word projection. Superimposition, projection.
What is that word?
Projection.
Projection. Okay.
What's the Sanskrit word?
Adhyasa. Adhyasa. So avidya actually causes an adhyasa. What is this adhyasa? What is relatively real, which is relatively real, which is the world, seems to be absolutely real. Sometimes what is my subjective reality also seems like absolute reality. And in the process, the absolute reality is completely missed out. Absolute reality is totally missed out. This is what we call adhyasa. So that means, suppose there was ignorance and there was only total ignorance, it will not create any problem. Right? Suppose I tell you, Do you know that, so there's a silly example in our Shastra, sometimes it is silly example. So what, a crow in a heaven doesn't have teeth, suppose. You don't know it, avidya. What difference does it make whether you know there is a heaven, first of all, whether there is crow in heaven or not, and whether he has teeth or not? You have avidya, right? You don't know it, but it has no consequences. You understand? So many things. Black hole. Suppose I ask you to define what is black hole. Susan is scared. I won't ask. And how does it work? What happens to time and space when it enters black hole? So you don't know it. But okay, you don't know it, but you would like to know it, but it doesn't really make any big difference in your life. But here, when you don't know the nature of Atma, it leads to some confusion of reality. And as you begin to live with that confusion of reality, it has repercussions for you. Right? So all of a sudden you don't know the nature of Atma as the whole. So what happens is it's not only you don't know, it leads to an adhyasa. What is the adhyasa? I'm small. I'm finite. Then you have to live in the world. Yet another adhyasa. Oh, the transaction with the world will make me full. Or yet another type of adhyasa. World is a really bad place, so I have to stay away from it. I still remain small. I want to detach myself to world because the world has given me too many discomforts, suffering. So what happens is, all these conclusions build because of, there are repercussions of this ignorance. If this ignorance was not bothering you in your day-to-day living, you can actually say, what do I care? There are so many things in this world which I don't know, and it doesn't really change my life in any way. But this avidya actually creates a certain vision of reality for you. And that vision of reality for you is not comfortable. And we are constantly trying to get out of that comfort. But where we are searching for comfort is at a wrong place. So further adhyasa. So this is why this kind of a adhyasa, and everything happens within this adhyasa. All your pursuits are all within. There is a brilliant bhashyam. Bhashyam is commentary of Adi Shankaracharya at the beginning of Brahma Sutra. It is called Adhyasa Bhashyam. I think it is probably one of the most brilliant pieces of work I have seen in my life. Brilliant. Because the whole thing starts with, why should I even bother to correct my vision of Atma? Why? And then he talks about this adhyasa and how it actually distorts everything that we do and distorts every action and the whole basis of our transaction with the universe. And then we want to keep, but within this adhyasa we want total fulfillment, and how is it not possible? This is where also you will see moksha is so important, because it is not It's not operating within adhyasa and looking for solution. It is attacking avidya. It is actually, that ignorance which is giving rise to these conclusions, right? Those conclusions will not go away until I see the reality. So that's why the only way to deal with adhyasa is to attack its cause, which is avidya. Ignorance. Okay? So this is why he says, until you attack the ignorance, this kind of a mix-up will continue to be. You can't totally avoid it. The relative reality will seem like absolute reality. Sometimes your subjective opinions will also seem like reality to you. And in this process, the absolute reality, which is Advayam Brahma, is nowhere in sight. So therefore, this is extremely important to remove, right? So what we are trying to do is, the only way to remove this adhyasa is to attack avidya, which is the cause of this adhyasa. You don't know this, therefore this is happening. Right? So, how do we do that? So now, when we see many, we have to see absolute, and that absolute is one. Okay? So, let's take one form. So, let's take the a form of, it can actually go. Let's take Shuktika Rajasa. Okay? So, there is, I see silver. So, this is what my subjective reality. What is there empirically is mother of pearl. This is what we call objective reality. Objective. Being objective means it's empirically true. Empirical reality.
What is mother of pearl?
It's like a
No, I want the object.
It's a shell. No?
Oh, it's a shell.
The shell
Yeah.
in which this pearl is growing.
So it's a shiny shell.
It's a shiny thing which sounds like. So let's use a shell.
Now, you see, when you see,
It's like a-
imagine the situation.
So you're on the beach.
Yeah, you got it.
So suppose you're on the beach and you see something shiny, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is immediately, oh wow, there is some silver. But that is your projection. That projection cannot take place without something being there.
Yes.
But what is there is actually a shell, but you don't know it exactly. So what is there? It is showing you don't know it is a shell, but it is giving you an adhyasa of
Silver.
silver. This is called the ignorance leads to adhyasa.
You said projection cannot happen if there isn't something, but projection, imagination is projections, and it can happen without first an object.
Yeah, but you have to have some data, and then you can, suppose you imagine in your dream, right, a buffalo with a human head. So how do you imagine that? You have seen human head, you've seen buffalo, in the dream you mix it up. You can't imagine things that you don't know. Right? So, but we mix up, it's true. So we mix up many things that we know, then that is called imagination. So, now, so this is what we call an empirical reality. So this is a shell, and we think that this is the absolute. And our objectivity ends here. So what Vedanta does is, it makes us ask a little bit more, is there something more fundamental to shell than just the shell? So therefore, now, I don't know very well, this shell is made up of what? Huh? Calcium? Sand?
Maybe silica, calcium, different minerals.
It's all minerals. Okay, calcium, silica, I don't know this. Okay. So that means there is yet another Satya-Mithya relationship. What is the yet another Satya-Mithya relationship? Without minerals, the shell cannot be, but the minerals can be without being a shell. So that means what we have done is, instead of stopping here, we have gone one step further. This seemed like Satyam to me. This seems like reality to me, and this seems like Mithya to me. Now, this has become Mithya, and this has become Satya. Because the relationship is, this is independently existing of this, but this cannot exist without this. Okay? Yeah.
But there is a slight difference in the sense I mistook the mother of pearl to be silver,
Exactly.
but the composition of the mother of pearl is minerals and calcium.
That's why I call it a subjective reality, and I call this an empirical reality. Right? There is a difference. Obviously there is a difference. Correct. Yeah.
two types of body.
This is why I told you there is Vyavaharika, the Mithya, and then there is Pratibhasika Mithya. So this, because this example is given like this, so this comes under Pratibhasika, the subjective reality. And this comes as Vyavaharika. So our normal understanding is our Vyavaharika is the reality. So what Vedanta does is, Vyavaharika we are not saying it's not. Compared to Pratibhasika it is, but it is not the final reality. Right? So that's why one is your subjective projection. Here you are looking into the composition. How is this made? Right? So therefore, these minerals, so they become Satyam, whereas this becomes Mithya. But different type of Mithya. Okay. Now, the minerals themselves are what?
Molecules.
Molecules. Now, he's a good thing or he's a scientist. Okay. So now, so therefore, now without again, this Satyam is only provisional. Now, this has become Mithya and this has become Satyam. Why? Because without molecules there are no minerals, but minerals, molecules exist without being minerals. So there is yet another Satya-Mithya relationship. Then molecules themselves are
Atoms.
atoms. So now, atoms, and this is the process you were saying, Rajoshi, right? So atoms themselves now become Satyam, and now this becomes Mithya. So do you understand, there is not one Satya-Mithya relationship, there are series of Satya-Mithya relationships. In one given thing, there are series of Satya-Mithya. They are all gradations of dependency. One is with reference to that other thing, it is independent, but in itself is dependent with reference to something else. So this is how it is. Okay? So, atoms and then particles. This is Satyam, this now has become Mithya. Then after particles,
The quarks and gluons and gluons.
Vibrations.
It's okay.
Vibrations.
vibrations is your imagination. That goes back to Pratibhasika. We want to get more to reality than our imaginations. Please don't use spirituality to then create some energy, something, some higher, some this. It's all our imagination. Stick to the Shastra. Stick to the Shastra and you'll see Ishvara. Not energies and not vibrations. Okay? So, this is what...
Electrons and protons.
Okay. Particles are electrons and protons, right? Yeah. So then you will see what? Quarks. Then, what, Surya?
Then there are different types of quarks.
Okay, now
So
here
let's
let's
forget
not go. Let's not go. So that okay. So now what happens is, this is how far as the quantum physics goes. So they are very clever. They may not use the term Satya-Mithya relationship, but in effect they are saying that. What they are saying is, actually this, our understanding of the world ends here, saying that shell is a shell, and this is real, and this is unreal. I mean, this is your projection. They are far more sophisticated in their understanding of the world, and they actually see the fact that there is a form within form, within form, within form, within form, and it is all connected as what? Satya-Mithya relationship. One is independent of the other, but the other one is dependent on the other. Right? And there is a chain like that. So the same thing, when you look with reference to this, it becomes Satyam. But with reference to this, it becomes Mithya. Okay. Now, what is the word that is used in the verse? The substratum. So that means, what is the final building block of the universe? Because you do, the very fact that you do see this, that means if you use logic, there cannot be infinite regression. It has to end somewhere, because without it, you will not see this. This is called logic. Right? So that means the very fact that there is a shell existing, it cannot mean that there is an infinite regression. It can't go on. There has to be one causeless cause, which is what we call the substratum.
Adhisthana.
Adhisthana.
In the verse it's mentioned Adhisthana.
Yeah, in this verse.
Substratum is a little bit vague.
Yeah, substratum is the word used, but it is adhisthana.
In the verse it's written Adhisthana.
Now, the thing is, when you use your eyes, and when the scientists do all these research, how do they do it? They use perception and inference. That is the method through which they arrive at this, right? Highly sophisticated inference. But it is all based on perception, and perception-based, sophisticated, multiple-step inference. And this method, as I told you yesterday, can only see objects. So this is why it keeps going further, and ultimately we are all grappling with, okay, now what exactly is the final adhisthana? And this is where Vedanta walks in. Because it says, that's why it's pramana. The final adhisthana is not an object.
It's a concept.
So that means, because this all, in fact this we say it almost is a concept, because there are no tangible things that you see after which level you don't see anything tangible.
Assume God.
No, already at the quark level.
Quark level you don't see anything tangible. So you can say that this is all then mathematics and all abstract, right? So this is, it all kind of reduces, to concept. Concept doesn't mean a given, it means it is indefinable, right? Not totally categorically tangible things anymore, right? So now, what we say is that there are two things that we have to say. The first, let's look at Ishvara.
Neema, what is Adhishthanam?
Yeah, this is the final
reality.
The
absolute
final-
reality.
reality, or the
final conceptual thing
The cause
where
of
we
everything.
can't see beyond.
exactly.
beyond.
So it's not a concept. No, please. The final building block of the universe, to be precise. Please don't add it and make it like concept. Concept means like, here it can become final building block of the universe. So that means you see the universe. So it must have a final cause, right? It can't not have a cause. There is, you find me one effect which has no cause. It's not possible. So you see this very complex universe which is an effect, it must have a cause. But there is, what is a problem? There is a cause within cause, within cause, within cause, within cause, within cause. And you then don't find the final cause, but it has to be there. Otherwise, the effect cannot exist. You can't have a case of infinite regression.
So that's why we say that the final reality or final adhisthana is causeless, because there is no cause beyond
Excellent.
that.
This is why we call it causeless cause. Absolutely. And this is why it gets the name adhisthana, on which everything exists, but itself cannot, has yet another, it doesn't become mithya. It becomes the final cause without that being mithya. That's why it becomes the absolute.
And you also call it beginning.
Sorry?
And you call it also beginning.
The beginning, no. Beginning is something which is what we call in time, no? Time, beginning is in time. Here we are talking about truth of a given thing, right? Please don't confuse the two. Beginning, we will look into it. What is the relationship of this final reality to time? What is the relationship of this final reality to space? Right now, we are not looking into that. What we are looking in is simple object. And what is the truth of this object? Is it clear? Yeah.
Is it also that you can see this from minerals to like a concept from gross to subtle?
Yeah, it gets subtler and subtler. Yeah, it gets subtler. That's true. But in fact, if you really look at it, it seems subtler. The definition of Sukshma Sharira is something totally different. We are still talking about Sthula Jagat. Physical Jagat. So please, now if you bring something else, it becomes very difficult because the mind is such, it mixes up things. Right now I'm not talking about Sukshma, this is a different thing. Sukshma is something which is like the sight that you have. It is never going to be tangibly available for you. So the Sanskrit language and how we use the physical, subtle, it has very precise definition. So what happens is, why? This is true, but in physical jagat, it's still within sthula, it is getting subtler. But when we are talking about Sukshma Sharira, we are talking about something totally different. We are not talking about this. Okay.
Just to clarify, so Adhisthana, is it in physical reality, the building block?
Sorry, the building block.
Yes,
The building block.
Physical reality.
It is a, yeah, so that means there has to be, no, there has to be a reality to the physical world, there has to be a reality to the subtle world, there has to be a reality to the causal world, there has to be one, whichever way you look, you have to find a final reality. Right?
I'm not just understand how we will make the shift from the physical reality to the reality.
So that means you are trying to understand how did it come, and if you look at the physical reality, actually it doesn't remain as physical as it seems. Right? Even a scientist will tell you. It's not like Veda that tells you. Here it seems very tangible and physical, but if you look into it, it's actually here it is something which is quite interesting. It's mostly space and all these atoms which are just like going around, and mostly space, 90% space, 99 point something space. So then you can say, how can physical thing, this is how it is. We are not producing it, this is what the world is. If you want to understand the nature of the world, if you keep coming back to your perception, it will keep misguiding you. This is why you have to use the appropriate pramana. Our whole tendency is to, our perception seems more right than the pramana. And that is a big, and therefore then what we do is, then because we are so committed to our perception, we want to change the perception to understand the reality. The reality is not about changing perception, it is understanding the what? The truth which actually at one point gives that perception. Right? After so many things happen, it gives you this perception. You are not changing this, you are trying to understand this. But if you keep coming back to your perception, and if you want to change all this perception to suit your eyes, you will never access reality.
So is this equivalent to the Boo that we see, the physical world?
So please don't introduce yet another. See, now what happens is, what will happen is, the Sanskrit uses many, Bhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha and all that. Right now, just stick to this. Try to understand what we are talking. Because if by doing this you bring something else, I have to, that's a whole yet another big thing. So I have to then explain this, but this goes. So, and then if you, now you're looking into this and you bring subtle, then subtle is yet another thing. So don't do that. Because what will happen is your mind will go all over the place without understanding anything properly. Right? When you understand this, try to understand this. Don't bring something else, because that something else is yet another huge analysis. So you lose track. This is how mind moves. Over a period of time you lose track, it's like association. This reminds you of this, then you ask question about that, then that reminds you of something else and you ask question about that. What are we talking about? Just try to understand this first, then we move to the next topic.
And don't forget that now we are looking into a verse, and what is this verse saying? They come back to that, and now she is like unpacking the meaning of the verse and presenting how we make sense of the verse. Okay? And the verse speaks about what? A shell, a silver. And then it speaks about some adhisthana, some reality or truth.
Which is the final building block.
Okay? Like the shell is the truth of what appears as silver. It says this entire universe maybe has some truth or some foundation or some absolute reality, which is called Brahman. So we are trying to understand that. Okay? So come back to the verse.
Yeah, this mind which then starts thinking about something else is the mind which cannot go into the depth. Because what happens is, by the time this, then you want to understand that, then you want to relate to something else. So that will only deviate you. What you need to do make the mind learn one given thing properly. Now, please let me finish, because otherwise some millions of questions, and then what happens is first listen to what I'm saying, then you can ask me as many questions. In the middle, whatever comes to your mind, please refrain from that, because we are not talking generally about everything in this world. We are looking into verses, and we are looking into a certain methodology we are using to try to get to something. Okay? So when you ask questions, just keep in mind that, because it is now I'm noticing that it is true that it is going here and there. So, okay, good. I think somebody pointed out, and now I'm little bit noticing that. So that's good. But every question is good, but then I also get engaged. But that engagement is not necessary. Okay. Okay. So therefore, now what are we coming to? So that means till here quantum physics will take you, and then it will tell you, well, we don't know, really we don't know, and we are looking and we are researching, and then they have all these labs, but in Switzerland there is one, in Chicago there is one, they have all these particle accelerators where they move the particles at a very high speed and they try to break it and see what is the content. So this is what the research is going on, and they are very and then they talk about some, I don't know what, God particle and things like that, right? So now we are not into physics, we are getting back to Vedanta. Okay. So now what Vedanta says is, if you look at as an object, as the building block of the universe, you will never find it. So the whole Jagat is Mithya. So therefore, in the object, if you are trying to find the Satyam, the absolute, it's not possible. So therefore, what is actually the more fundamental than this is Ishvara, all knowledge and all power. Okay, so what does it all knowledge and power mean? That there is a power in the universe which brings into manifestation the tiniest of the tiny, whatever, that building block, right? So let's start with cork, which is what we know. So this is a manifestation. Manifestation of what? All knowledge and all power. Now, this quark has to organize to become particles. So don't think this knowledge and power is only restricted to this. To make from quarks to particles, you still yet another intervention of all knowledge and all power. from particles for them to organize electrons, protons and neutrons to become atoms. It yet requires all knowledge and all power. From atoms, when you go to molecule, yet another intervention. All knowledge and all power. This molecules, in fact you can go back a little bit. Suppose instead of shell, you are making a rock. What will happen? Till here, it is the same. What is happening? The particles arrange differently to become what? Different atoms, then different thing. And so that means the knowledge and power remains. The things remain the same. What happens is different permutations and combinations create different forms. But the intervention of all knowledge and all power is something which is, at one point there is similarity, after that there is a deviation. The same atoms and particles can make water, it can make mountains, it can make animal body, it can make fish, it can make bird, it can make a human body, it can make sun, moon, planets. How? There is an intervention of knowledge and power, and it is so intricately done. Right? So therefore, so at every level, what you will see is, now it will create shell, and this also creates human being. Same process.
Laws of order.
Sorry?
Yeah, laws of order.
All, the same way, the same process, right? Cells into organs, organs into a given organism, which is a human being, which is a human body. Right? Now, a human body is also given the mind, neurons coming together, intelligently put together, with all the chemical connections, psychiatry, electrical connections. So they have found drugs, how to intervene. Because what do they do? Please understand, when a biologist is looking into molecular biology, what is that scientist doing? Studying and studying, and years and years and years of research to understand this knowledge. This is Ishvara, and the human mind is trying to access into all knowledge from that standpoint. And you can spend lifetimes. You can spend your whole life and you still can't totally get even one thing 100%. So therefore, this is something that all the way, human body, human mind, and then human mind is given all these 4 functions. Right? And so many different capacities, and that what you can also superimpose. That possibility is also given. And when you live as a human being, you can keep working with at these 2 levels. Either you project on the world, or you are kind of little bit in touch with the world. You totally miss the presence of Ishvara. Life without Ishvara is extremely incomplete. Your vision of the world is so partial. There is one all-pervading presence, all knowledge and power, all knowledge and power, all knowledge and power, all knowledge and power. And your buddhi doesn't see it at all. It only works within your subjective projection and this object which is appearing in front of you. So that means it is fraught with what? Adhyasa. Tremendous adhyasa. So this is why if you want to see the reality, you need to look into the truth of anything and it will come to Ishvara. You replace this shell by any object in this world, including human form, sun, moon, planets, galaxies, same story.
Ishvara abides in Maya.
Maya we haven't used. Please don't
Sorry,
use it.
I didn't mean to. I apologise.
Because what will
Sorry.
happen is, first of all, we have to understand Ishvara properly, its relationship with time and space. Then we have to think about Maya. But Maya, suppose you say Ishvara abides in Maya. What will happen is, see, the mind is such, it doesn't want to stay with realities, it wants to move to something else. And something else which is all vague. You move from vague to vague, you never get to the truth.
So I didn't think my question, that I was diverting
No.
with that
But
question.
what
I
happens
apologise.
is, because Maya requires a whole class.
Yeah, that's good.
And what is Maya, what is Ishvara, it all requires a lot of understanding. We can't throw words, please don't throw words. Throwing words means you seem like, I've heard of yoga, I've heard of this, I've heard of that. Well, words don't mean anything, it's your clarity and your understanding.
Can you please tell last thing from last particle to Ishvara? That
Yeah.
thing, can you please tell again? That relationship.
Yeah, so that relationship is, see here you can't find an end. You can't find an end. Why? Because you are looking at an object being the final building block. And what happens is it keeps going further and further and further, from particles to quarks. From quarks now they are looking, so there is no end to it. So what Vedanta says is, if your focus is on an object, because with your perception you can only, an inference, you can only come to an object. So if you, there is no end. So but there has to be an end, there has to be a causeless cause, without which the effect is not possible. So what is it? Therefore you need Vedanta. So Vedanta shows totally a different reality. It doesn't show an object being the building block, it shows knowledge and power. Sarvajnaha Sarvashaktiman Ishvara as being the final building block. But it is not only the building block. Don't think of it as only this final thing. At every level of organization, there is this all knowledge and all power. This is why when I look at the body, from one standpoint, I can say that it is my body, one form. But suppose you as a doctor is looking at my body, you see so much knowledge. All your medical school study, what did you do? You didn't look upon this body as a form, you looked into the knowledge which makes every part so intricately connected to the other. You understand? What you are accessing is knowledge of Ishvara, which has already put together this body. Already it has come with these complexities. Is it clear? So you may think I'm studying medical sciences, but actually what are you doing? You are accessing Ishvara from the standpoint of biological laws. Knowledge within knowledge, within knowledge, within knowledge. Endless.
So would you say at every stage of the empirical reality there is all knowledge and all power?
Absolutely.
However, not put subjectivity.
So same, right? Even that is, you can't say there is no knowledge and power, because in the human brain that is given as a potential, right? If it was not given as a potential, so it's a program of the brain, either you can understand things accurately, or you can partially understand it, or you can vaguely understand it, or you can totally not understand it and think you understand it. that is also within Ishvara. Don't think that the subjective reality is outside, otherwise Ishvara will become limited.
In fact, psychology is dealing with this, trying to find some cause and effect, some correlation, explaining the behavior patterns from some causes. If any individual is put with a certain background, in a certain environment, how would you behave? And then they extrapolate. So you are trying also here, there are some laws in psychology. It's a science now. Okay? So the domain of between empirical and subjective, and how we switch, and you can come back to this empirical reality, is the domain of psychology. Right?
So this is why, just I put it, very excellent answer, but I'm just putting it differently. Our teacher was quite brilliant. He would say, even your sorrows are in the order. Nothing is outside Ishvara. Because there is a certain mind with its capacity to think in a certain way, it thinks in a certain way. Is it outside Ishvara? No. And your ability to change it and bring it back, that is also within Ishvara. So that means your understanding, you can't exclude anything from Ishvara. Otherwise it will cease. Then you need to create another entity. Who is that entity which caused that? You will get into problems. So that means Ishvara is, as I said, please don't think of it as a person who's guiding you, who's deciding what is good for you. Take out all of this. Right? Ishvara is in form of knowledge and power, which has the potential to manifest the whole universe. And through the different laws, it governs the interaction of everything in terms of potentialities. Depending upon the potential that you collapse, there is a result, consequence. This is how the world is organized. Okay, so that means human brain, its capacities, how far, its range. Did you design it? It has come. Prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, all of this is all already designed. You don't do that. What do? You study it and then you see how it can be put back in order if it is outside the order. But that potential that you can study it and you can undo it is also within Ishvara. That is part of human brain. That extremely complex problem solving is possible for human brain. That is also within the order of Ishvara. How much of it you collapse? How much of it you don't collapse? All within possibilities of Ishvara. And when you collapse this, what is going to be the outcome? Everything is within Ishvara. Okay, so therefore, this is something which is now the all knowledge and all power. Now, you may think this is the end of the story. But it is this all knowledge and all power, which is the knowledge is not clouded for this. So therefore, there is one more final reality which is more fundamental than all knowledge and all power, and that is what? What is this Brahman or Atma or whatever? That it is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. So that means this knowledge, Jnanam here refers to consciousness and awareness. What is more fundamental to knowledge is what we call awareness. What is the relationship without awareness, can there be any knowledge? No. But awareness is independent of knowledge. So therefore, this is the final adhishthanam, Advayam Brahma, according to the verse. This is the final reality, which is the truth of everything.
So Satyam Jnanam.
Ananta. So that we will see. What it means is, there is an existence which is not like this existence. This existence is what? It comes and it goes. It is finite. All of this is finite. It is within time and space. Right? Starting from all of this is all finite existence. This is that which is the absolute existence from which this, the entire finite existence comes, but itself is free from, because the finite keeps changing. One form goes, another form comes, all of that within time and space. It all comes and goes. That existence, which is the existence, it's an absolute existence. It itself is
Infinite.
It's not coming and going. Okay? And that is also awareness, which is not a given mind and its awareness. Do you understand? And this is why it is so important to bring Ishvara, because it is more fundamental to Ishvara, and therefore wherever there is knowledge and power, that's exactly where there is awareness. Because the relationship is Satya-Mithya. What is a Satya-Mithya relationship? That wherever there is knowledge and power, by definition there has to be awareness. So because Ishvara pervades everywhere, the truth of Ishvara, which is awareness, also pervades everything.
Can you repeat that?
Limitless and timeless?
So that means this awareness, this is why this is the final reality, which is limitless and timeless. Why? Because it is in and through everything, and at the same time it is free from everything.
So is Satya Brahman and Mithya Ishvara?
So this is something that we all absolutely clearly have to understand, because this, what you are saying is in some ways true, but it has created a lot of problems. Why it has created problems? Very often, the people who are Vedantis, they think that they are holier than thou. So what happens is, they say, ultimately Ishvara is Mithya, why should I deal with Ishvara? I want to go straight to Satyam. Commonest of common is misunderstanding. So that means what happens is this Ishvara becomes Mithya, and suppose you say I am Satyam, then why should I bother about Mithya, which is Ishvara?
Like Arjun.
Huh?
Like Arjun.
Let's not attribute. He was poor guy, he was having a lot of respect for Lord Krishna, and he was trying to understand. Right? He didn't have this arrogant attitude. A lot of these Vedantis have a very arrogant attitude. Oh, Ishvara is Mithya, I am Satyam, why should I bother about Ishvara? Very common among Vedantis. Lord Arjuna was humble and he was a seeker. He had questions.
Same question what is.
No, but don't attribute to that question. He was just trying to understand, if I want to get there, what is better. He was not trying to bypass. He was not trying to say, Ishvara, you are Mithya. He didn't tell Lord Krishna, you are Mithya, why should I think about you? I want to Satyam. He didn't say that. Right? So, but he was curious. What is the relationship? But here, that which is ultimately Mithya, why should I bother? Because then you become bigger than Ishvara. Because you are Satyam and Ishvara is Mithya. This Vedanta will be destructive. Why is it destructive? In fact, it has to be understood totally differently. What you have to say is that what? That Ishvara knows its truth as Brahman. And the teaching is from Ishvara to a Jiva. And Ishvara is not teaching you, you're bigger than me. I'm Mithya and you're Satyam. Get your buddhis right, guys. Ishvara is teaching you, hey, when you see Bheda, there is only me. There is only me. And wherever I am, my truth is. I am that all knowledge and all power, and exactly where I am, that's exactly where my truth, which is Satyam Dhanam Kalam, is. So therefore, you as being a form, you are pervaded both by me and my truth. You understand? So that means my truth is also your truth.
Can you just write that line? Pervading part.
Yeah. This is something, it is so, please change around. Otherwise, this Vedanta will get you the biggest false ego. Unimaginably false. From which there is no retracting. So that means, what now? You want me to write? Somebody else is. Andre, can you repeat? Okay, now can somebody repeat? Because I say from my
As a
understanding, I
form, you are
don't remember.
pervaded by me and my truth.
Yes.
Aware.
So wherever that means, wherever there is any form, okay, let's see this. Wherever there is any form, right, it is pervaded by, either I can see my body as just one form, or I can see what? All the intelligence which is making the body. My brain works, my organs work, my whole system is very intelligently put together. So wherever there is a form, there is Ishvara. As the intelligence which is making that form what it is. And wherever there is Ishvara, there is Ishvara's truth, which is Brahman. So the whole teaching is from Ishvara to this jiva who's caught in this reality. And he's saying, hey, there is actually only one. How is there a one? You can't go there. You first have to go here. There is all these different forms that you see. It's all part of this grand order of things. So intricately put together. All the interactions and all. Then, wherever I am, that my truth is here, which is awareness. Let's go back to the body. Okay? This body. Form, jiva, this, right? If you look at the intelligence which makes what this form is, that is what we call Ishvara. You use Drik, Drishya, Viveka, and you come to, when do you come to? Mind becomes Drishya and awareness becomes, you'll find all three. You understand? Brilliant knowledge. Upanishads, it's not talking about some world out there and how it all. Any form you take, you'll find where that form is. There is intelligence, which makes that form what it is. And at that place, when you look at what is Drik and what is Drishya, ultimately you will come to only one Drik, and that is awareness. You try to look at the universe with Vedic vision. You will find only one. It is. Nobody can shake it, nobody can contradict it, because it is available here and now. If I was talking about some Ishvara out there and some higher entity and higher energy, then what, and it's all vague. Nothing is clear. It is what we call demonstration. It is using the pramana to show you the reality which is here and now. Uncontradictable. So this is our Shastra.
So we talk about this human body, but the body itself is a result of like millions of years of evolution. It's a trial and error, right? So does it mean that the Ishvara is doing like a grand experimentation, trying out?
So that means the nature of this universe is there is a constant change, right? There's a constant flux, and that intelligence must have a flux. Why? Because suppose today I perform an action, I have to get the result, right? So that means that it has to change. Change is part of life, right? So Ishvara, that is a good question. Ishvara, please don't think of Ishvara as a fixed entity. If you think of Ishvara as a fixed entity, it will become obsolete.
With the wheel as well.
Right? So that means, obsolete means what? So the world was not, this kind of a technology that we have, this internet and all that was not available earlier. So now that genetic modification and all, so many new technologies are coming, right? So suppose Ishvara was a fixed entity, what will happen? Now it has become obsolete. Ishvara is all knowledge and all power within which all possibilities are there. And as human mind is given a free will, you collapse one possibility and there is a consequence. So that means it's in a constant flux. This particular thing is also represented in Nataraja. Have you seen Nataraja? Dancing Shiva? Right? It shows how the universe is in flux. So there is nothing which is fixed. What is fixed in this universe? Nothing. Every moment is changing. Even within your body, so many different processes are happening. They are all changing. But within that, there is always harmony maintained. It doesn't go astray. So that means a constant change, but within that, a great grand order, which gives stability, which enables us all to interact.
So can we come to this inference that the awareness in the universe grew over a period of time? Let's say pre-human being 200,000 years back, their relationship with Ishvara, and let's say Upanishads were written 10,000 years back, and their understanding of Ishvara. So it grew with awareness, or awareness is independent of
God. No. See, we are not, what grows is what? Tell me, what grows? The entire, everything which exists, everything within time and space, all these objects, the evolution and all that we talk about, is till where?
In the physical realm.
Exactly. Right? This is where a lot of changes have taken place. Right? But the knowledge and power which actually brings about this, and initially it created one form, then it created something else. Itself is what? Within which all the possibilities exist. Itself is not evolving as such. It is in form of potentialities. So that means this is why it is not finite knowledge which then becomes more or less. So it is this all knowledge within which you can't do something which is outside the potential. So either you can collapse the potential or you are within that whatever, right? Living within whatever is existing right now. Or some new discoveries, what? Collapsing some potentials which lead to further progress. But all that happens, where does it happen? In this world that we see. This awareness that we are talking about is not human awareness. Please don't mistake it. This is what I keep saying. We are not talking about some human awareness which is evolving and which is, that human awareness and potentiality belongs here. Here we are talking about something much more fundamental, which is not only truth of this, it is truth of everything. Right? So therefore, these two, Ishvara. Now, let us understand a little bit better, and then I will. Yeah. Okay. So, what relationship between Satya Mithya? That I think it will help you to understand. Okay. The relationship with Satya Mithya is just even if you take simple example, the first level example, pot and clay. Okay. The relationship is the clay pervades entire pot. Which part of the pot clay doesn't pervade? It pervades entire pot. At the same time, it remains free from attributes of pot. The size belongs to clay or pot? Pot. The dimensions belong to what? Whether it is big or small or blue or what, it all belongs to pot. This is an amazing thing. Pervading everything, it remains free from it. This is why Ishvara pervades everything and remains free from it. If Ishvara started getting affected, Ishvara will have million more problem than us. We are stuck with one problem. Ishvara will be stuck with billions of problems. Then Ishvara needs our help.
There's some specialized help we can recommend.
Right? So the beauty of the creation is Ishvara pervades everything and at the same time is free from everything. Why? Satya Mithya relationship, every Satya Mithya relationship is like that. It's not a belief. It's not like, oh, Ishvara is free. It's not some kind of a thing coming out just like that. Every Satya Mithya relationship is like that. Satya pervades Mithya and is free from the attributes of Mithya.
It's like the eyes and the object you see, right?
Absolutely. Right? The eyes, without eyes, you can't see the objects, but eyes completely free from the attributes of the objects. Very good, Stefan. So, yeah.
Can we say that Ishvara is like a system behind all the other systems, without any purpose, just working with knowledge and on power or knowledge.
So
there is no direction, there is no purpose, just working.
No direction sounds like a very... why no direction at all? Because it's not an entity, right? It's not like there is some entity with no purpose and no direction that is just working like that. They don't think like that, right? So what it means is, because it is not an entity, therefore it can't have a purpose, because purpose and is with reference to entities, right? So what you are saying is true, but you have to turn it around a little bit, right? So it is within which all entities exist, but in itself is not any given entity. Therefore, you can't attribute purpose to it, you can't attribute the kind of direction to it, right? Because otherwise it will become like a human mind. Right?
Nor he's experimenting.
Yeah, nor he's experimenting.
Because experimenter will be different from what it is experimenting upon, right? Here again, we see when we ask questions, ask yourself the question: am I now making Ishvara an entity which is separate from the universe? Okay. In all these questions, there is this implicit kind of assumptions behind. It's normal, it's okay. But then we are showing you how you are falling into that trap and come back into the vision. Right?
So this is a very good point. Generally what happens is we keep going back to our thinking. So we have to come back to this thinking. This is the whole big, it's an effort. It's not easy. It's not easy because all your questions come from your understanding. But actually if your questions come from wanting to understand this better, they are brilliant questions. But if your questions come from you going back to your vision of things, which is a very common thing, it's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Then inherent in this question is some wrong understanding. So that we have to correct. But that's okay. That's also part of teacher's job.
Okay, I just want to clarify something. We understood the end cause is Brahman.
Yes.
And Brahman is causeless cause.
Yes.
But what sparked Brahman to change itself to something?
So, no, okay. So this is what, here there is no change. So we will see that. It will show. It is Vivarka Upanishads. We will see. Yeah? This is not changing. So as I said, here everything is changing. Ishvara is also kind of recreating this whole Jagat. But this is the only unchanging reality. Brahman. We will see that. I will teach. That is a good question. You had a question? Yeah.
You're telling us that the ultimate reality is not dependent upon anything.
Yes.
And it is free of everything. So why, I don't even know how to express this correctly, why did it go to the trouble of manifesting a universe and having all the, I mean, wasn't it happy with things as they...
So that is again, now this is something which is again a very most common question, right? It's not like this I've heard million times and I myself had this question, right? So again, if you start attributing things, right? So we are not talking about an entity who has decided to do this. This is how things are, right? This is how things are means, can you deny? What we are trying to do is what you see yourself in a Jagat. And you are trying to find out what is the truth of it. Right? So actually what's happening is when you see Jagat and you have a fixed idea, what you find that actually it's only intelligence. Which is manifesting as all these different forms. And that intelligence itself has its more fundamental reality, which is the existence and awareness, Brahman, which itself is not changing at all. So then for that non-changing reality, how can you ask a question, why did it do it? If you really understood what the reality is, the question disappears. A non-changing reality, you cannot say what was the intention of that non-changing reality. Do you understand?
No, actually I don't.
Non-changing reality means what? It cannot have an intention, it cannot have this, so that means this is how things are. On one hand, if you look at the universe, there is universe. But if you look into the truth of the universe, there is only one thing. That one thing actually is appearing as well. Why? This is how it is.
So that's the answer?
Yeah, that's the answer. This is how it is. Because on one hand there is no universe in the first place, there is only Ishvara. And Ishvara's nature is what? Manifesting, unmanifesting, manifesting, unmanifesting. This is the nature. So why this nature? Well, this is how it is. And ultimately what is the nature? The non-changing Satyam Dharma. If you really understood that, the question of why this universe. So what the Upanishad is saying is, when you see the universe, what? That there is actually only that is the answer.
So if we are asking that question, that means we're still seeing the world with all the Vedas. I mean,
Exactly.
we have heard
so
you,
that
but we're
means
still seeing
absolutely,
it.
absolutely. So that means there are some questions which are asked from not what I'm saying, but what you see. So suppose from what you see there is no answer. Actually the answer lies in you seeing what I'm saying. then there is no question. Exactly.
So is it fair to say that Ishvara is nothing but evolution? Because eventually knowledge and power will lead to evolution.
So it leads to changing, yeah, exactly. So that means, suppose, what it means is, suppose I ask you, what will the world be like 1,000 years from now?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows, right? Because it also depends upon how you collapse certain possibilities, how I collapse. Right now they are not collapsed. This is why, one thing that Surya reminded me, is when I say Ishvara is a cause and effect relationship, don't think about some fixed destiny or anything. Right? Because that will, again, that, oh, Ishvara has decided everything, so what, I am a puppet or what? Not at all.
The action will cause
So
a
that
cause.
means, exactly. So even if you go and ask Ishvara, what will from 1,000 years, what will the world look like? It will say what? Well, it depends. Depends upon what? How you behave. And this is what this famous Al Gore documentary on the environment. Brilliant. He says that he first looks into what the cause of today's global warming problem, this rise of sea level, all kind of climate change, ozone layer depletion, they fixed it or not? I don't know. All these environmental problems. Okay? Now, he looks at all the causes, all Ishvara. Causes, which leads to this event. What's going to happen in the future? Several scenarios. If we don't do anything about it, this is not it. If we do something about it, but not at enough pace, this is the scenario. But if we actually change our thing, this is it. Ishvara. Possibilities, how we collapse those possibilities, the outcomes are yet to come. So please don't make your life a fixed, fatalistic life. Everything is Ishvara. Don't use this knowledge loosely. This is a highly sophisticated knowledge. Don't oversimplify it and say everything is Ishvara. Hey, your free will is also Ishvara. Your responsibility to make it sharper and act properly is also within the capacity of Ishvara. Your being lazy is also the choice that Ishvara has given to you. So that means that this is why this knowledge requires a sharp, noble mind to get all the implications of this knowledge right. Right? Don't think Ishvara is experimenting with you and giving you so much pain, and because he's just experimenting. It's like first you make it into an entity where it is not. Then you make him a sadist because he's experimenting, is causing you so much pain, and he's just having fun, looking at you, suffering. You see, one error and leads to series of errors. This is why nobody gives, for the longest time, this knowledge was very well preserved. That adhikaritvam was very much emphasized. Because you can go, the mind is a fertile place for imagination. You can use this knowledge to imagine anything. It has to come back to realities. That's why a lot of prayers have needed. Unknowingly we go off the tangent. So, I'll end with this. Okay. Now, the next verse is, we'll talk about, this final reality, and also actually we'll go a little bit more into the cause of the universe and Maya. We'll talk about Maya. I'm sorry, but I just that, when you are looking into this, then you thought, I don't know. But I'll talk about it next two classes. Om Purnamada Purnamidam
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति।